This is some noise that you can use to sync them up.
Cast your mind back to when the Charlton Heston movie about the Ten Commandments came out, and Metro Goldwyn Mayer wanted everyone to come and see the movie, and so they got a hold of the Fraternal Order of the Eagles and said, why don't you go ahead and give out a lot of these Ten Commandment monuments to help us publicize our ginormous blockbuster movie that we've made with superstar Charlton Heston. And so because the movie wanted people to go see it, they gave these things as gifts to many cities, and many of them ended up on public land, much like this one. And then in 1989, the Freedom from Religion Foundation asked the court to please remove this. And the court said, no, we will not remove this because the Ten Commandments are the basis for constitutional law. Well, that is a very interesting concept, which I will argue here in a minute, but I don't want to be derailed by that right now. So the Freedom from Religion Foundation appealed that in the year 93, and they won that case in the Colorado Court of Appeals. But then the state Supreme Court reversed it in November of 94, and the Supreme Court of the country, the United States Supreme Court, refused to hear the case in 1995. So this beautiful monument right here is quite controversial, having been embroiled in controversy since the year 1989. Now I looked up that Supreme Court that was not interested in hearing the case of the Ten Commandments, just to see how many of them were religious, and let me just go down the list here and see what you think. Anthony Kennedy, he was a member of the 9 people who refused to see this, and he is Roman Catholic. I believe that they worship the Ten Commandments. Clarence Thomas, he's also Roman Catholic, as is Antonin Scalia. All 3 of those fellows were Roman Catholic. We've got Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer, who are both Jewish. Of course, you can see here the, well, right underneath this peace stain right here, you can see the Jewish symbol right there, because these are, of course, the Hebrew commandments. We have those 2 Jewish members. And then we've also got John Paul Stevens, the Protestant, Sandra Day O'Connor, and David Souter, the Episcopalian, and then of course the 9th member that I haven't done enough research yet to find. And so those 8 out of those 9 people were incredibly religious, and they do believe that these things were handed down from God. And so you can see why a very religious Supreme Court would not be interested in trying this again. And that's of course what they did. Now let's go back to the trial judge, the Colorado trial judge, who said that these religious artifacts here can be on public land because the Ten Commandments are the basis for constitutional law. Let's now examine that, actually, shall we? Let's have a quick look at these 10 commandments here and see how many of these are actually part of our civic code. I think you'll find that it's only 30%. If we're only using 30% of this code for our civil code, it seems kind of weird to say that it is foundational to our civil code. Because I don't know if you've heard of the Code of Hammurabi, but the Code of Hammurabi is what this nonsense is based upon. Let's follow, if we will, shall we, the story of the Hebrews, of the ancient Israelites, as they were taken captive into the nation of Babylonia. Babylon, of course, the country that Hammurabi ruled. You'll find that there was no record of Moses until after the Babylonian captivity. The ancient Israelites did not create the myth of Moses and his laws until they heard about the true story of Hammurabi and his laws. That this is actually founded on the Code of Hammurabi, the Babylonian king who brought order to his people. And in the year, let's see, 1750 before Christ, Hammurabi's code was written down in that giant finger. You ever seen that finger of Hammurabi's code? Well, Hammurabi wrote that in around 1750 before Christ. And in his code he talked about the presumption of innocence. He talked about how the accused and the accuser get to provide evidence. In law 196, in fact, he says, if a man destroy the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. Eye for an eye. That, of course, comes from the Code of Hammurabi that was around 1,000 years before the story of Moses was ever around. Because the story of Moses, of course, is based on the idea of Hammurabi. So no, in fact, our constitutional law is not founded upon this, but it is founded upon what this is a type and a shadow of, the Code of Hammurabi. And I don't see many of those around in our public lands. I don't see the finger of Hammurabi everywhere with his hundreds of rules on it, but for some reason the Order of Eagles thought it was good to bring this mythology into our lives and put it out here. And let's go over one of those rules as well, the rule, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This was a restrictive measure, because back in those days revenge was unchecked. If someone destroyed your brother's eye, you would kill that person in revenge. And the Code of Hammurabi said you're only allowed to take as much as you lost. It was a limiting factor. And when Christ came along and said, you've heard eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I say turn the other cheek, that was another limiting factor. And since then, we've had 5 or 6 or 7 times we've been able to do that again. We've stopped being abusive to our women. Is there anything in here that says women are equal? We stopped taking humans as slaves. How come there's no rule on here that says slavery is immoral? We have stopped abusing our children. There's a rule in here to take care of the parents, but where is the rule to protect children? So no, our system is not founded upon this nonsense. It is founded on the reason and logic that we have collected together for thousands of years. And in fact, this version of truth wasn't even novel for the time. This is a gross breach of the rule that we have, that we must separate church and state, that religion and politics must not mix, because no good comes from this. And here is a stone sitting for 50 years like a cancer, like a canker on our public lands. This religious nonsense must go, and I protest this in the loudest voice available to me. This is not okay in my country. This is a problem. We need to separate church and state, and these 10 commandments are a violation of that idea.